Hello and welcome to a brand new Houdini tutorial. In this video we're going to be looking at creating a Pyro simulation, but we're going to be using particles to run this simulation. So before we get started, I just want to set up the layout in Houdini to match what I like. First of all, I don't like having this double window here, so I'm going to click on this up arrow just here to get rid of that. And then I'm going to press P on my keyboard, and you'll see that we get this box in the corner that says no operators selected. However, if I put geometry in or put a node in, it will show all the parameters in there instead of in a completely new window. So I'm just going to name this geometry node Pyro, and I'm going to jump in and create a pop network. As I said, we're running this this Pyro through particles, so we do need a pop net for that. To run and we'll need to make some sort of emitter beforehand, and we need to make sure it's interesting. So we're going to create a circle node before this. Drop that in there. We're just going to make sure that it's on the ZX plane, and we're going to increase the number of divisions to 50, and what you'll notice if we just play that back is we get something that just adds particles to that circle. Lovely. So I'm going to dive into this popnet now. I'm going to make it do a bit more than what it currently is. So I'm just going to go to this pop source. I'm going to go to the birth tab. I'm going to set this life expectancy down to 1. So then when we play this back again, we start to see them coming in and out of existence there. We're then going to go to our attributes tab, and we're going to change this use inherited velocity to set initial velocity. And we're going to change the velocity on the Y to 10, so that we get something a bit more like this. It's a bit quick, and there's a lot happening, but it doesn't really matter what this looks like at the moment, because we've got a lot more to do before we get to where we want it to be. So we can also change the jitter birth time to negative, and we'll set the interpolate source to back. Lovely. So something that this doesn't have yet is gravity. And that's what's going to stop this from going quite so high as well. So if I bring down this output, so to give myself a bit of room, I can add a gravity force node into here. And now what we'll see is that's much smaller, and it starts to sprout out slightly as well. Lovely. So I'm going to add a couple of nodes here. So I'm going to add a pop axis node in just before that merge, and then a pop wind node to go on top of that. So on this pop axis node, we're going to use this shape, the shape tab, to change the shape of what we're using of the axis. So on the radius, we're going to go to 1.9, and on the height, we're going to go to 1.14. Just going to see how that works, and it should be coming back down. Yep. Lovely. So we're then going to go to our speed tab, and we want our orbit speed to be around 7.5. These are all parameters that you can experiment with and try different things out yourself with as well. And then we're going to change the lift speed to 3.6 to start with. We are going to change this a little bit later once we've changed a few other things. And then this suction speed we're going to change to about 8.5. And if we look at that now, we start to see this. Not a lot's happening, but we've got a bit more to do. It doesn't matter too much what it looks like at this point. We'll make it look much more interesting a little bit later. So we're going to go to our pop wind node next. We're going to change our amplitude to about 3.5. This is going to see a bit more noise come into this here, which is what we're after. And then this is where we can go back to our pop axis node and change this lift speed. So if we change this lift speed to about that, get it a bit higher. There we go. Lovely. Alright, so we need to create some attributes for this now. The attributes that we need to create are burn and temperature, and they both work slightly differently. So first of all, we need to create them. So we're going to go up a level, just neaten this up a bit, and we're going to create a point wrangle. And in this point wrangle, we're going to be creating the burn and the temperature node. So what we need to say, we need to create a couple of expressions, and we're going to go f at burn is equal to 1, and then we're going to say the same for temperature. F at temperature, make sure you spell it correctly, is equal to 1. So then we've created those attributes now, and we can go into our pop net again. And I want to create a pop color node just before the pop wind. We don't want to use color to run this, but we want to use alpha so that we get a bit of fall off happening, or fade off as the particles die. So we're going to change this to a ramp, and if we do it that way, they're going to fade in, but we want them to fade out. So to stop that from happening, we just flip the ramp around, which you can do with this button here, and all that will do is make it so that they fade out rather than fade in. Lovely. Cool. So we're then going to go back to our point wrangle, and we're going to say to use that alpha. We're going to times it by the alpha. So we're going to add times by f at alpha. Make sure that the alpha is spelt with a capital A, and then we're going to do the same for the temperature. F at alpha, ensuring that that A on the alpha is a capital letter. So the reason we multiply is so that we can then scale it, for example, 10 times the number. And then we're going to add a volume rasterize attributes here, and we're going to view that there. So we're going to bring in the attributes that we want. So we want burn and we want temperature. We do also want to bring in velocity here. This isn't what it should look like. Oh, it's because I'm so close in, I think. Oh, no. So we also need to change some of these here. So I'm going to change this to 0.05 on here. Did I do that elsewhere? Not in there. Yeah, 0.05. I'm going to change the particle scale down to 0.1 or 0.01. Let's try 1. There we are. We're starting to get something there. I actually want that a bit smaller, so I'm going to go for 0.01. And then we get that happening there. Lovely. We're also going to just take this normalize by clamped coverage, and we can start to see nothing there. We're going to add our velocity into the rule below, so that we can then bring that back in, and we start to see something a bit more like this. We can turn that back up a bit, actually. Let's try that again. There we are, it's a bit denser. We can change the voxel size later on so that we get a nice simulation, so that the particles is much smaller. And then we can, so we'll add a Pyro solver node after this. fairly happy with how that looks at that point. This Pyro silver will start to add some more colour. So we've got our voxel size before in this rasterize here. I'm going to make sure that they match. Cool. This solver comes in sparse, but you can change that here should you want to. We're not going to do that today because that's very much it's a lot more CPU heavy, so we're going to avoid using a dense solver for this. Cool. So in this, we're going to go to we're in our setup tab, so we're going to change a couple of different bits here. So we're going to change the voxel size, then we're going to head to our bounds tab. I'm going to limit the maximum size because otherwise this will start to get much larger. So if I play that back, it will just continue getting larger at this point. Well, if I hadn't ticked that, I would start to get something a bit more like that. Otherwise, it can go higher and higher. Cool, so I'll take that back, limit the size. I might just turn this up slightly as well so we can see a bit more. We'll turn it up by 5. We can turn boundary conditions on. So if we treat Y as closed below, that means nothing below the emitter. Nothing's going to happen below it. Everything's going to happen above it. And then we can go to our sourcing tab. So we have a few different sources here. We've got density, temperature, burn, and velocity. So that you'll notice that the target field for burn is flame, but burn is already a parameter within Houdini. Not sure why they've done that, but it's a bit interesting nonetheless. So in sourcing, that's where you can see all of those. And then we're going to go over to our fields tab. So we're going to emit from flame. Going to emit temperature from flame as well. Lovely. So the dissipation here will stop it from rising so much, and it will allow smoke to stay around for longer. Whereas in the temperature, we can change the cooling rate down to about 0.8. I'll turn it up to about 0.8, sorry. And then in the flame section, we can open this up and we can turn this down as well. We'll turn it down to about around 0.9 sort of area. Doesn't matter if you're a spot on. And then we're going to head over to our shape tab. In fact, I'm just going to check that. I'll just turn that off for now. We'll have a look at that in a little bit. And we're going to go to shape. Buoyancy is how high this will go. So if we watch that back first of all, that's going to go fairly high on it with a value of 1. You can start to see the smoke coming in as well now, which is really nice, and it's going to stay around for a bit longer. Cool. So we've got about a second of frames there. Now if I turn this down to about 0.3-ish, and start from the beginning, we start to see that that's coming, it's taking longer to get that high, and it might not even reach the bound at the top. Well, the smoke will, but the flames won't now. So this is where we want to start adding a few other shape guides in here. So we're going to start by we're going to add wind, and we're going to add disturbance. So on the wind, this will add some wind velocity in the direction that we add it in. So we've got it on 1 on the x-axis. If we watch that back, so the x-axis is this way here. If we watch that back, we'll see that it moves slightly towards the x-axis now. You can see it really work if you up that value in the wind direction, and you start to see it blowing in that direction a bit more substantially. We don't want that, but that's something that you could do. And then we've got our disturbance, which is just here. This will affect the density by default. So just the smoke and not the flames. You can try to change these values and make them much higher than they are. So maximum is 10 on this. You can obviously go further than that. Just ups the amount, how dense the smoke is on here. So you can see much more smoke here. That's quite nice actually. So what I'll do is I'll just run that back. It's all happening a bit quickly, so I'll put real time on. This is the real time toggle to see it play back in real time. Well, whatever you have cached at least. It's quite nice. But I'm going to set mine to 10. And we'll see that cache. While it's still dense, I quite liked the denser one really. Gave us a bit more shape in there. So I'm going to add, let's go for 20. Let's see how that looks. We're looking specifically at the smoke here. Yeah, so we're getting a bit more happen. You can see a bit more detail on the smoke now. That's nice. Cool. So I'm just going to add a light into here and a grid so that we can see it a bit more readily. That's quite nice. I think I'll add a spotlight from here. So to add a spotlight from here, we're going to hit Control on the keyboard and click on Spotlight, and that will add it from where we are at. Well, as close, a little bit of an offset, so we can come in a bit to make sure that we're looking at the right spot and everything. That's kind of where we want it to be at. Notice that even if I move around in here, it will move the spotlight as well. So bear that in mind as well. You can turn that off by just hitting this lock button here. So if I've turned that off now, and I can now move out from the light. I am going to add a grid. Just going to chuck that in here. I'm going to dive in. I'm going to change the size to 50 by 50. And the amount of rows to 100 by 100. And then I'm going to add a bend node after that. So this bend node, so we've got the spotlight coming in from over there. So I want it to bend on this axis, but the opposite way. So if I try changing this one, it will bend this side, but we want the opposite side to bend. So we've got the capture direction on here. If I just set that Z to -1 instead, it's got the right size. Beautiful. And then I can turn this capture length up, so we get instead of getting a sharp bend, we get it a bit further. Turn this up a bit more, we'll turn it up another 10, like that. And we get a much nicer look on there. I might even just add a transform into here, just so I can move it slightly that way, so it's not interacting with the flame at all. And then I think on this light needs a bit less exposure on it. Cool. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to just focus back on this pyro. In fact, let's add a colour to this as well. Let's make it a blue. And then we can make the light a different colour as well. Make that a bit more purpley. We can add more lights and everything in later. Just trying to get a feel for how this is going to look, how I want this to look. I'm going to jump into back into the PyroNet. I am going to scale these down a bit more, so we get a bit of a higher resolution. So I'm just going to the volume rasterize and changing the voxel size to 0.02. And then I'm coming back to the Pyro solver and changing the voxel size to 0.02 as well. This will give us a bit of a nicer, and it's like all the voxels are much smaller, so we get much more detail in here, which is what we're after. Yep, that's lovely. So I'm not going to let it cook out completely because my computer won't take it. However, I am going to add a Pyro bake volume node after this. And you'll notice that when I highlight this, it disappears. That's because we need to turn our fire on. So we have our Pyro bake solver. We've turned on, smoke's already on. We've turned on fire. And in this fire tab, we can turn on masking. And then we can see what we get the smoke to come back over the fire. So if we turn that back off in a minute, so the purple parts are where the smoke is. Oh, sorry, the darker parts are. So we can close that off there. And then you can change some of the values in this node so to make the fire look how you would like it to look. So I'm going to leave the tutorial there. I'm going to turn masking back off so we can actually see that happen there. It's quite intense, so we can turn that intensity scale down as well, and the source range. Okay, let's cancel that cooking, and then you can check through that yourselves. Alright, that's all we've got time for in this video. Have a play around with the Pyro bake volume. Try having a look at some of the values that we've changed in here. So the setup, the bounds. I probably wouldn't change the bounds too much, but the sourcing is all of our attributes that we've got in here. And then fields and shape are typically what we look at to change how this simulation will look. You can add a camera in here as well. So once you've got all of that, you could add a camera in this view. Just make sure that you've got a bit better lighting than what I've done here. I've not really spent too much time on the lighting. I might have a second light and then probably even a third light, just to get something that I think looks nice. I might even add a light that goes this way quickly. Spotlight. It's too much. Too intense. We can also change the size of this area, distant light. We'll just turn the exposure back down. So we get that. And we can change the colour. So we had purple on the last one, we'll go for a greenish. So we get a bit of a clash of colour. And then we can look back through our camera. And we'll start to see that happening now. And then we'll probably get an overview or an area light coming directly down. So if I come out of here, come to about this, so I get everything in, and then area light. Now if I look at the camera, everything's a bit bright, so I can change the intensity here, and we get a bit more of these shades. And then you can start to look at rendering after this. Alright, so I hope you've got on with this well, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Alright, take care.